Are you a people pleaser? Maybe tired of being a people pleaser? Welcome to the Crack the Code podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about just that. Today, we're talking to Jetty, who is a speaker, model, and wellness advocate. As the CEO of True Jetty, she uses her personal stories of invisible illness, bulimia, Lyme disease, and depression to help women wake up from a life on autopilot and unapologetically go after their desires. Rebelling against the perfectly curated influencer image, complete with unattainable standards, she focuses on the real contradictions of life, like fashion over 40, beauty without the heavy edit, and having enough while still wanting more. Jetty is with an IAWP health wellness coach, holds certifications in makeup artistry and image consulting, and has successfully completed 2 Ironmans. Welcome, Jetty.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I did not know you had done 2 Ironmans. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a few years back, 2012 and 2013.
That's a lot of training that goes into all that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. So before we really get into the whole people pleasing part of it, maybe you can just give us a little bit of your background, because you've had a lot of health issues. And I'm sure that part of where you're going, it came from where you were and all those issues that you had.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm Dutch born, living in Canada,
Mm.
and I moved here with my husband 20 years ago. And in my 40s, I started to have, well, health issues, and it turned out to be Lyme disease. And actually, I had breast implants at the time too, which are figured out later were causing problems. But that health, that deep rock bottom with my health really skyrocketed, or cycled into my new second life, my new chances. Yeah, my new life.
Mm. And was the bulimia and was that prior? Like, was that younger times when you were
Bulimia.
experiencing that?
Yeah, I was 18 until 40, but then I still struggled actually until I was 50 with binge eating. Not as severe, but yeah, definitely diets or having rules around food cost me all those issues, and also issues with body image, not accepting certain parts about my body.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really common, especially in our society. And what were some of the things that helped you turn that around?
Well, not dieting anymore, having no limitations, but that was really the last step I could implement. The first things were really healing my past, healing my traumas, things that I had experienced during childhood, teenage years, and yeah, my eating disorder started in a world where there was no social media, so the pressure was there too, and I believe it came from having older siblings always talking about diet, or things that weren't right about our bodies.
Yeah, it's so common. I think it's slowly turning around, but yeah, just figuring out the relationship with food, because there's so much emotion that it's so emotionally charged. And so you believe that that's where it started in childhood. I think that's really common.
Yeah, it really started when I was around 8, and when I kind of linked food or eating certain foods with love, or it gave me kind of like warmth, and also it was numbing, of course, too. But the hard thing was with having Lyme disease is that a lot of doctors say you can't eat this, you can't eat that. So I was really trying to be perfect about those things, to while spiraling me into more eating rules and eating disorder. So it was kind of a never ending
Mm.
thing. And yeah, so that was the
Yeah,
double.
that's complicated then, isn't it? So,
Mhm.
so how old were you when you found out you had Lyme disease?
It was in 2017, so
Okay.
I have to do some math.
So
I
a
was
few years ago.
45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I had been struggling with issues for 4 years then, and we were kind of suspecting Lyme disease. I even had a bullseye rash on my
Mm.
left breast,
Mm-hmm.
which only 30% of people actually get. But the society and medical world is so pushy that I kind of put it really in the back of my brain and just listen. Lyme is not real, or it's this, it's that. So I had a lot of different diagnoses until I got the Lyme disease diagnosed. But I
Yeah.
had a wonderful medical doctor here in Canada, actually, that supported me through that journey.
Oh, that's good. I know a couple other ladies actually that I've interviewed recently, and another lady that I know from BC who had it, but it took her over a year to get diagnosed because no one knew what was going on with her.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then once you had that, so were you still kind of working on getting over your eating habits when you had Lyme disease? So you kind of had them both at the same time?
Yeah, I had them both at the same time.
Oh,
Although I did not have bulimia anymore. That ended when I was 40. And but I still had, yeah, rules around food, and doctors were kind of complicating it for me. You can't eat that, you can't eat that. And so it is, so you want to get better and you believe that all those things. So and I restricted myself, but then after 2 weeks or so, I would completely lose it, eat one cookie, and then devour the whole kitchen. Or
Oh, no.
yeah, that was hard.
Yeah. So how did you get through all of that? What was your strategy there?
I did, at that time, I did low carb eating with sort of like refeed days while I could have carbs.
Mm,
And that did help me to allow kind of to eat kind of like junk foods.
yeah.
But to be quite honest, and I have counted calories for my whole life up until last year when I turned 50 in January. I turned 50 and I started working actually with a registered dietitian who is specialized in food freedom, no
Mm,
rules, no
mm,
bad foods. And that really, really helped. I had to let go also of a certain body image I always was going after, skinnier than I am now, but I feel so much better and more energized. I have, so yeah, it definitely healed my body too, like
yeah.
eating the extras. And weird enough, I don't need to eat ice cream every day anymore, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's really like, yeah, with when you forbid certain things, you want it. And so
Hmm.
it's been quite the journey. And I'm also really a strong advocate now for all sizes are beautiful, because yeah, I am more like a medium built woman. And in the modeling industry, you see extra small and extra large. And there's a whole range of people
Yeah.
in that middle. And I, yeah, that's, I think, something important we have to, or
Yeah.
I want to share with the world, also for our daughters and sons, that
Yeah. Yeah.
see
And
all.
it will help if media like magazines and websites and stuff start
Yeah,
using models more as real people and real sizes. So we're not led to believe these unreal expectations. So I'm
yeah,
curious because we were going to talk about people pleasing today,
yeah.
how some of that background came into the people pleasing part of it for you.
You mean the
We had it
diet?
like, yeah, did that, how, because you were so worried about your weight and then you had this Lyme disease and, was people pleasing part of your upbringing, or do you think that was part of your, self awareness, how you were concerned about your body and stuff? Like,
Um, no, I don't. I think they were two separate things. I think I really tried people pleasing really hard while I was a child. I kind of had to stay safe. I had older siblings and they all had different opinions. So I just, I was all these chameleon personalities, and pleasing everybody while totally losing my who I was, my authenticity. And I think that's food was, then I could be or release all that, numb myself to, because I did want to be seen and heard and really say my truth, but I couldn't. So I do think they were connected. Yeah, and it's a very
Yeah.
interesting
Like
question.
the food was kind of the drug, right?
Yes,
To
it
bring
was
you
a drug.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, to bring
Yeah.
me back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then did that carry on the people pleasing? Because I know a lot of us do it, maybe not all the time, but sometimes it's easy to just, when you're married or whatever in a family, it's just easier to kind of go with the flow and, help please somebody else just to avoid something else happening in the background. Did you kind of carry that forward into,
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
adolescence and up into, getting married and all that?
I did. Yeah, and although my husband is a very easygoing person, I still noticed that I think in my late 40s, I I kind of got out of this suit of people pleasing, but it did carry on with friendships, in workplaces, yeah, all situations. And actually getting the Lyme disease really changed that around, because I realized at some point I can eat all the healthy foods, I can take all the drugs, I can take all the supplements, but if I don't change what's inside of me, then I'm not never gonna get 100% healthy, or as healthy as I can be. And so I really realized at some point, late 40s, that my body and mind are really one. I always thought people talking about it's so weird. And no, it's truly is. Your mind gives signs to your body, and you store things in your body. And yeah, people pleasing was something that made me very, very, very unhappy. And I lost people through it eventually, because I was the pleasing type, the play small girl or
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
And at some point I could not be that person anymore, which I'm
Yeah.
very grateful for.
Yeah. Well, I know. And was that part of the depression, or was that depression part earlier, do you think
I
too?
think so, yeah. Just not being able to even know who I was anymore, because I was pleasing everybody.
Yeah. And it's like everything. I mean, I work with people with their emotions and releasing their negative trapped emotions from past events. And everything starts within. We keep trying like a new diet, a new this and a new that. Because we don't want to look inside and see what's really going on and what's the cause behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah. So when did you make some shifts then to get away from the people pleasing and, share with, how you did that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be listening and going, yes, that's me. How do I stop doing this?
Yeah, it actually started really in 2017 with my diagnosis that I got. And at that time, when I had the diagnosis, my father-in-law was passing away in the Netherlands. And his last words to me were like, "Oh, that's so beautiful that you know now." And he was a person who always saw me, and same for my husband too. So then I was, and a doctor said what is happening inside. A medical doctor said that, and she was actually in the US, so I visited the US too. And she said what's inside you, is also important, so you have to start like meditating. And I started doing that. I did not like it at all. I did not know how to sit still, but I found my methods. I'm not the meditation type that sits still. I like to listen to things. So
Yeah.
it's different for everybody. But I just realized I started to become more aware of how people treated me. And that really started to clash. And I think I had one conversation with a friend that I had to stand up for myself for the first time. And still, when I visited that, I recently visited that in my thoughts because we are talking about this now.
Uh-huh.
And it's still a little, yeah, it's still hard, but that was when I had started standing up for myself. And that relationship, of course, started to crumble
Yeah.
because, yeah, the dynamics started to be different. And I
Yeah.
was alone for a while. Well, I always had my husband and kids, so I never
Mm.
was alone. But I had no close friendships for a while, other than in the Netherlands, because I had to walk away from those dynamics
Yeah.
in order to grow myself and start to have my own voice.
Yeah. And it's uncomfortable, like you say, to change that dynamic in certain relationships. But if you want to change, something has to change, and it needs to come from within. But it doesn't have to be in a bad way. If you
No.
hopefully can have a conversation with somebody and create those boundaries, and like you say, maybe you're growing away from those people and you need to surround yourself with different people that are more supportive.
Yeah, and it was definitely a gradual thing. It was not like it happened in one day, but yeah, and I also still have friends from when I was like 19. So
Mhm.
when you are able to be yourself and set boundaries, it can work, but it's in the end, it's so much better. It's uncomfortable at the time, but always remember that being uncomfortable often is good and is a sign of growth.
Yeah. So just we got a few minutes left, but if you had a tip that you wanted to share with somebody who is listening and they know that they're a people pleaser and they're not happy because things are not going the way they want, because they're allowing other people to be, taking over, and they're not standing up to themselves, do you have any kind of tips that allow someone to get started on this road?
Yeah, I would probably start writing things down in a journal, what you have said and what you have wanted to have said
Mm.
differently, and also how you feel now, in versus how you want to feel in that relationship. And I think just becoming aware of those situations are key, and I'm writing them down. I'm not a big journaler myself, but I do write these things down.
Yeah.
And you also don't do it perfect all the time, which is fine. It's really a gradual learning. And I think really, yeah, really important is, how do you want to feel
Yeah.
about yourself and in a relationship?
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. And I do love that journaling. I know I have not usually been into journaling myself either. I never really knew how to do it. But recently, in the last few months, I started doing what's called morning pages. And I love that. If you're wondering about this, people are listening, Google it. It's just a unconscious writing. You just get up and write 3 pages every morning when you first get up, when your mind's just getting going. And it's just a brain dump. You can write down, whatever you're going to be doing today or whatever. If you're, had a conversation, you can be mean, you can write, anything down. It doesn't have to make any sense. But what I have found that it is very therapeutic. And as you're
Yeah.
going through those pages, all of a sudden thoughts start coming to you. Like you say, if you start by saying you had that conversation with somebody that went sideways yesterday, all of a sudden your subconscious may be coming up with, a theme on how you can make that a better conversation the next time. So I love that idea.
Yeah, I love that too.
Awesome. So just as we're wrapping up here, Jetty, if people want to reach out and maybe talk to you more, because you've got a lot of really interesting things in your background, and I'm sure that a lot of the listeners might want to learn more about you and what you do, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way is to look up my Instagram if you're on Instagram, and my handle is True Yetty, TRUJETTY. So Yetty speaks her truth
Hmm.
always. And yeah, I have a website with the same name, but
All
I
right.
think Instagram is where most of the action happens.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. We'll have that in the notes for the folks to listen to. And just remember, everybody, if that is something you're doing, if you're finding that you're too much of a people pleaser and you want to make a change, look within. There are lots of ways to switch that around because it's never too late.